Hello and welcome to Mostly Sapphic Books, where I am on a mission to read every single book about lesbians. Today, I think we're going to talk about two books, one of them being Burn Down, Rise Up by Vincent Tirado, and the other being Dead Flip by Sara Farizan. I gave both of these books similar ratings. I think they kind of have similar themes. I think if you liked one, you might like the other. So we're going to talk about both, but we're going to start with Burn Down, Rise Up, because I read that one most recently. So Burn Down, Rise Up is a YA horror novel about generational trauma and history and like class and race. I really like what this is saying. I think of these two books, this is the most meaningful in that it's actually communicating something. And I think it's a good message for kids, teenagers especially. It feels a little on the surface a lot of the time, but that's okay. It is for a teenage audience. The briefest summary of this book. I'm gonna be brief, guys. I can do it this time. For context, if you're new here, I have very long-winded summaries, but this is about teenagers who play a game. It's called the Echo Game or the Train Challenge. They go to the train tracks and at a certain time in the night, and then they're sort of transported into this mystical, demonic hellscape version of whatever city they're in at the worst moment in that city's history. So this book takes place in the Bronx, and it's very centered on the history of the Bronx and like the Bronx fires, burn down, rise up, and sort of the slums that happened after that fact. It gets into the health issues, the poverty issues, the sort of decaying buildings, the sort of dirt and grime and the mold and the rats and all of that stuff. It's very centered on the Bronx history, which I liked that part was explained to me like I was a 14-year-old writing a history paper, because I don't live in the Bronx, I don't live in New York City. I didn't really know anything about this, and so I did need that to handhold me. So some of the on-the-nose, just blatantly telling you what the book is about, works. It works. But our protagonist for this book is a teenage girl who, she has a crush on this girl, and that girl's cousin goes missing. A lot of kids go missing when they play this game. The cops didn't find the white kids who went missing, and so they didn't even bother trying to find all the brown kids who went missing doing this. Our main cast of characters is Black, Hispanic, and so this group of friends kind of comes together to do this train challenge, figure out what happened to this cousin that they're following. Also, our main character is invested not just for the crush, but because the guy who came out of the train game, the cousin, sometimes people go to the train game, and if you don't follow the rules, then you like get stuck there. But even if you do follow the rules, like you can come back to the real world, but then you're like haunted by the voices. The game keeps calling you to play it again and come back to the hell world. And so sometimes people like, they can cross over and come back. So anyway, this cousin came back, and then he went to the hospital because he was ill, and then he infected a bunch of people at the hospital with black mold. One of those people was a nurse who is our main character's mother. So her mother is in a coma, and she is infested with this black mold. And also our main character gets the black mold at some point. And so she also needs to solve this for personal reasons and not just crush reasons. Not just gay reasons, but gay reasons are definitely there. So we have our group of teenagers sort of traveling into this hellscape, hearing these echoes of people from the past. It's called the Echo Game. It echoes the city's history. They meet all these people who died in the Bronx fires, who died of poverty, who died in these awful buildings that like irritate their asthma. Our main character has asthma, and she grew up in this apartment that had asbestos and mold in it. Our main antagonist here is the slumlord. Again, it's on the nose, but like it works because it's for a teenage audience who probably doesn't know a lot about this stuff, especially if they aren't from the Bronx. And we get a lot of Bronx history here. The kids are doing a history paper on the Bronx at the same time, conveniently. That helps them. So I really like what it's trying to say. I like the themes. I like the history of this. It definitely has a message. I like that this is just a ragtag group of teenagers sort of banding together. It talks about community and like the average people and how like we have to protect each other as average people. One of my complaints for this book is that the main character is a fucking idiot. Like, she's real fucking dumb. Maybe that works conceptually, like thematically. Like, you don't need a genius hero to come and save you. Like, you can't rely on one special person to like improve your community. Like, you just all have to band together as the general populace and do all of this together, the common man. But this main character was a little bit fucking stupid sometimes. My biggest complaint with this book is that it does feel juvenile. It every once in a while, just some of the writing hits you with, it just feels like a really kind of cliche YA book. The stuff really with the romance, pretty cliche. They're fighting over a girl. She has a best friend who also likes this girl. And it's like, oh no, does she like me? Is she flirting with me? It's sort of very typical. This kind of feels like a popular horror movie. Like a teenage sort of audience, not quite R-rated horror movie. Sort of what this feels like. It sort of feels cookie cutter in some ways. The message stuff is good, but like all of the interpersonal drama is it's iffy. It's sort of mediocre a little bit sometimes, and you notice that. One of the ways you notice that is that this main character is an idiot, as I said. I'll give you a couple of examples. So they go to this hell world, and one of the phrases that these like demon ghosts keep repeating is falsas promesas, which I don't need to tell you means false promises in Spanish. However, our main character hears this phrase dozens of times, and it's like, what does that mean? She is part Dominican. Her father was from the Dominican Republic. Girl. Even if she doesn't speak Spanish, which clearly she doesn't, but you don't gotta speak Spanish. You speak English. You can figure this out, okay? I am very white. I don't habla a single Espanol, and I could figure it out, okay? She can't translate falsas promesas. Girl. I do not want to know what grade this girl is getting in her English class. There's another dumb moment that actually comes up twice. So her mom is in a coma. She has this infection. When she first learns about this, she goes to the hospital, and the doctor's telling her about the coma and the infection, and she's like, what can I do? Can I give her a blood transfusion? Does she need a kidney? I'm like, why would you offer a kidney for a woman in a coma? They didn't talk about kidneys. No one said anything about kidneys. She's like, could I give her my kidney? No. She doesn't need a fucking kidney. No one said that. And that literally comes up twice. The doctors tell her no. She goes to the hospital again later, and she brings up the fucking kidney. No one's talking about kidneys. Shut up. Stop offering your kidneys to people. And like, okay, she's a kid, not a doctor. But she's even saying, like, I don't know what I can do because I don't really know anything about medicine. My idea of medicine, the only knowledge I have of medicine, comes from watching medical TV shows with my mom, who is a nurse, who watches them with me and then corrects everything they do because they do everything wrong. And I'm like, wait a second. If your mom is correcting the show and like telling you how things actually are, wouldn't you have more medical knowledge than the average teenager? Because you live with a nurse. I'm not saying she has to be a genius. She's not a doctor, and maybe she doesn't care. Maybe she's not really listening to her mom, but I feel like just by osmosis, you pick up a couple of things if your mom is a nurse. Perhaps. Perhaps you wouldn't offer your kidneys to anyone with a broken leg or something. I don't know. This girl's a little dumb. There were a couple points where I was like, oh my god, your friends are doomed. This girl's our heroine. R.I.P. R.I.P. Cisco. He's dead. He's not coming back. The crush also gets lost in this demonic hellscape. And I'm like, damn, they're not finding her. They may or may not. I won't spoil the book. But again, maybe that works thematically, where like the average dumb teenager can in fact make a difference in her community. Political awareness is for everybody. I will say that this has some pretty good horror elements. You're never that scared because parts of this are so juvenile that you're like, oh, this is really YA. And it feels a little younger on the YA side. I don't know what age range it actually is. Like 14, 15 is fine. But there's probably also a bunch of 14-year-olds who are like, this bitch is dumb as hell. And they're correct. But there are actually some good horror elements that feel a little more elevated for YA horror. Like there's some gross stuff with like all the people trapped in hellscape are like burned or they have like holes in their body, and there's a point where like someone has a hole in their mouth and there's like a rat tail coming out of their cheek because there's rats everywhere. I'm like, that's pretty gross. That's cool. So some of the horror elements are fun, and then the thematics are really good and like really saying something and actually has a message and an important message for kids, and I think it could actually teach some kids some things, and I really like that about this book. It does feel a little bit mediocre in the writing at times, but not too bad. Not too bad. It's fine. It's a fine little horror YA novel, best for teenagers. Who knew? YA novels are best suited for children. I do need to compare this to You Should Have Been Nicer to My Mom by Vincent Tirado, which I just read recently. That book was not very good. That book was kind of a mess. That is a contemporary adult gothic horror novel, way less horrific than this. That book is really, really boring. There's hardly any horror elements. All of the characters are like two-dimensional. I said the characters in this book, Burn Down, Rise Up, are kind of cliche, but at least they're not overly two-dimensional. They only have one thing about them, and they actually have reactions. In You Should Have Been Nicer to My Mom, that's about a family who learns that there's a demon in the family and that they have 12 hours to kill whoever is actually a demon. And no one reacts to that at all. Absolutely no heightened emotions whatsoever. These teenagers in this book actually care that their friends are being kidnapped and that they're like seeing weird ghosts and hallucinating and fighting for their lives. So there's genuine emotions on the page, as you would expect. And it's not boring. There's actual action. They go see spooky stuff. They do stuff. People get abducted. People go missing. People are in comas. There's actual stakes. And it's actually interesting. It's actually horror. So this was a much better showing from Vincent Tirado. This is actually their debut book, if I'm not mistaken. And You Should Have Been Nicer to Their Mom is their most recent book. You Should Have Been Nicer to My Mom. So they've gotten worse. It could just be a bad book. I don't really judge authors by single books. Maybe that's just a one-off bad book. But I did see similarities in like the writing style, in the sort of, it's not elevated, it's not like fantastic writing, but it was better in this, just because the characters were better and there was actual things happening. This one was way better. But still not like my favorite book of all time, not the greatest. I gave it 3 stars. For a lot of this, I was even tempted to give it like a 2.5, 2.75, but I think the ending kind of pushes it to 3. I liked that. I liked the message. I thought this was really trying to say something, and I respect that in a book. You Should Have Been Nicer to My Mom was not even saying that much. There's a little bit about culture wars and like class, a little bit, because it's a rich family. It's not saying anything, and it's boring while it's not saying it, so I didn't like that book. Now we'll move on to Dead Flip by Sara Farizan. I read this several months ago, and I didn't have a lot of thoughts about it. That's why I didn't really make a book. But this book, reading Burn Down, Rise Up, made me think about Dead Flip, so I may as well talk about it. This is about 3 best friends. When they're 12 years old, one of them goes missing. Years later, he reemerges, and they figure out that he was sucked into a magical pinball machine, and he was in there for like 5 years. 3 years? I think it's 5. It's 5 years. Because they're 12 at the start of the book, and then they're 17 in like the present day, and it kind of goes back and forth between the timelines. And when he comes out of the pinball machine, he's still 12 years old, while his friends are now 17. So there's similarities in that people are mysteriously disappearing to a game. I guess that's kind of where the similarities end. This one isn't really saying a whole lot. There's not a lot of like cultural commentary here. This is not a horror novel. It's like vaguely spooky. And I think this one is even a younger side of YA. My cat shook her head and then got drool all over this. And her breath stinks. Okay. Like I said, they're 12 in one timeline of this book, so like it does make sense that this is a younger side of YA. And because of that, the writing also here feels a little bit mediocre. Or like simple, straightforward. This was very easy to read. It was a quick read. I got through it, no problems. I think the chapters are pretty short. The chapters are clearly labeled of like what year it is, and also who the point of view character is. I think we only flip back and forth between the 2 who didn't get sucked into the pinball machine, who are Corey and Maz. Maz is the guy, and then I guess that's Corey with like the giant head. And I'm gonna be honest, it's fucking hilarious that her head is like 3 times bigger than him, because I'm pretty sure they get like the same amount of page time and like perspective chapters. She is not 3 times more important of a character than he is. Gonna be honest, don't even remember who this guy is. And then the pink-haired chick is her love interest. She has a very minor side plot. That's another similarity between these books, is that the lesbian love interest thing going on is a very minor side plot to all of the action that's happening. There are bigger things going on, but there are technically lesbians here. This is a pretty cover though. I like that there's a lot going on. I like covers where you can like really look at it and sort of appreciate detail. You got like the pinball machines look cool. It's got kind of a retro vibe, which makes sense. This is set in the 80s and 90s, which was another little critique I had, is that it really, really wants you to know that this is set in the 80s and 90s. And they do that by dropping just tons and tons of tiny little details, like references to like 90s things. To be like, did you forget this was the 90s? It's the 90s. Bitchin'. It's really shallow world building to make you feel like it's the 90s. Like, it doesn't really feel like the 90s. It's just, they name drop, like, relevant cultural things. I think they make, like, Shrinky Dinks at one point. It was really bad in the beginning, because there was, like, 10 little references in one page. Just so that you didn't forget this is the 90s. Or the 80s. Whatever. It's, like, 87 to 92. So, whatever. Oh, here we go. I just opened to a random page. Let's see some references. You can't party to Nirvana, except for Smells Like Teen Spirit. Then it's like you read the lyrics and it's such a bummer. Rex and Effect, now that's the future of music. That's what you said about Criss Cross. She was wearing a denim jacket that feels 90s, and looked like a white girl right out of Beverly Hills 90210. Her name Janet, that feels 90s. I think that's the love interest. That's all for that page. That wasn't that many, but it's a pretty good effect there. And I think most of those were in the 80s to make it feel like even more older than the 90s, so that you remembered, wow, this is even older than the 90s, which is only 5 years apart, which is not that crazy. The Edward Scissorhands poster on my wall. Oh, but yeah, so the writing's simple, straightforward, for kids. Maybe kids like that kind of thing. I don't know. Kids reading this now would not have been in the 90s. So I guess they wouldn't know if it was really phoning in the kind of 90s references, or if it genuinely feels like that. I don't know, man. It was fine. It was an easy read. I don't have a lot to say about this. It didn't really blow my socks off. I don't remember if I gave this like 2 stars or 3. It's probably like a 2.5 stars in that it's fine, and it's straightforward, and it's readable, and it's kind of interesting. There's a cool little mystery, but it didn't blow me away at the writing. I'm too old for this, but it's fun. Not horrific. Is that the Stranger Things font? Or it's kind of like the title, like the blocking of the letters with the hollowness. Maybe they're ripping off Stranger Things. I haven't seen that. I don't care. The graphic designer was probably playing on the popularity of Stranger Things there. I don't know if you'll like this if you like Stranger Things. Maybe. I've heard Stranger Things was good, and then it got pretty bad. This is just kind of... It's mid. It's real mid. I don't recommend reading this if you're an adult who likes Stranger Things. Maybe. But I mean, I read it and I didn't hate it. But I do think it's for kids. So, if there's any children watching this, you might like this. Go do your homework. Stay in school. Eat your vegetables. I don't know, kid. Oh, but that's it. Just some books I've read recently. That's it. I don't know. That's all I had to say. Didn't have a lot really to say about either of these books. I guess the first one I talked about for a while, but I did just read it and it was just fresh in my mind. And it was trying to do more than this. And I appreciate that about it. Vincent Tirado has another book that is on my TBR because it is queer. It's called We Came to Welcome You, which is like a thriller. It has a very low rating on Goodreads. It was like a 3.05, which doesn't sound that low, but is like low for Goodreads. And then I saw a bunch of people not liking it. And I wonder if those people were like thriller people. I think it's about like a creepy suburbia. Like a lesbian couple moves into a weird suburban home and their neighbors are freaky HOA people or something. And I could see how that could go wrong, especially after reading Vincent Tirado's most recent work, which was worse than their YA novel. And this is another adult novel from them, so it might be bad. I'll probably read it. I don't think it could be more boring than You Should Have Been Nicer to My Mom. And I like a cheesy thriller. I don't know if there's gonna be like twists or like what the supernatural element is, but I mean, You Should Have Been Nicer to My Mom was not very supernatural either. And it was very marketed. I cannot say that word. I was editing a video this morning where I say that word a couple times, and I realized that that's literally not how the word is said or spelled. Marketed. I always add a bunch of EDs. Marketed. That one was marketed as horror, and this one is like creepy, but I don't know if I'm supposed to know what the twist is. I'll read it maybe. Not right now. Or right now. My library does have it. I'm thinking about it, but I will read it at some point probably. And I might hate it. You know, let's see how Vincent Tirado is. They've had one decent book and one pretty bad book, so let's see if it evens out in the middle, or if we can finally weigh one of those categories higher than the other, or if it's just like a slam dunk and it's way over there on the other side of the scale. I don't think so, according to all of the other reviews, but sometimes people are wrong. Sometimes people on Goodreads are wrong. Goodreads has a like button where you can like someone's review. I think they need a dislike button where you can dislike people's reviews, because some of y'all are wrong. But that's it. I'm done rambling. Happy reading. Have fun. Have a good day. Good night.